Once upon a time, in a distant village, there was a widow named Chioma. Chioma had lost her husband, Prince Ikenna, while she was pregnant. Her husband had been poisoned, and no one knew who had done it. As she sat in her room alone, crying, Prince Emeka entered the room, looking angry. "You are the one who killed my brother. I will never forgive you. I would rather finish you off. You don't deserve to live." "But I didn't kill your brother, Emeka. I am innocent," she replied. Before she could finish her sentence, Emeka grabbed a large stick and rushed violently towards her to beat her, even though she was pregnant. Overcome with fear and unable to defend herself, Chioma grabbed a glass and threw it at his head. The glass struck his face and injured his forehead. He fell and lost consciousness. Panicked, Chioma began to scream, "Help! Help! Who is there? Come and help me!" Suddenly, the queen entered the room, alerted by the cries. She began to wail and shout, "Why my child? Who could have done such a thing?" While she was lamenting, Chioma was sweating. Her worried face expressed how panicked she was. "Lord, what have I done?" she thought, trembling. "I should never have tried to defend myself. Lord, please make Prince Emeka get up, I beg you." Chioma didn't know where to stand. She dreaded the reaction of others who already suspected her of killing her husband, Prince Ikenna. She locked herself in her room, her face bathed in tears. "This is all his fault. I can only defend myself if I'm attacked," she thought. After a few days, Prince Emeka had recovered. He had regained his health, and his return to the palace was a moment of great celebration for everyone. Even though he still bore some scars, his mother, who had accompanied him from the hospital, was very happy to have her son back. While all the villagers were applauding the prince's return, he suddenly raised his head as if looking for someone. With a voice filled with anger, he shouted, "Where is she? Where is Chioma?" All the villagers began to look at each other, confused. The queen asked, "What is it, my son?" As the murmurs grew louder in the palace courtyard, Chioma came out of her room with her head down. As she walked past all the villagers, Prince Emeka spoke. "She is the one who tried to kill me. She couldn't bear me revealing what she did to the village, so she tried to end me." All the villagers were shocked, and loud murmurs could be heard in the crowd. "No, that's not true. I never tried to kill Prince Emeka," she managed to say while crying. The queen stepped toward Chioma, also in tears. "Chioma, why are you always attacking my family? Did we do something wrong to you? Why are you now targeting my son Emeka after already killing my first son, Ikenna, your own husband? Why are you trying to destroy my family? My king, my queen, this is all a misunderstanding, I swear to you. I am innocent." "Silence! Do you think your crocodile tears will solve the problem? Now that Prince Emeka has returned, you must pay for your actions. You will suffer the punishment of the gods of our village. You've done enough harm." The king turned away angrily and left. As the villagers began to leave the palace, Princess Ngozi gently approached Chioma, who was still sitting on the ground crying. She took her hand and began to comfort her. "Don't worry, Chioma. I am sure you're telling the truth. Our ancestors will be on your side, and everyone will clearly see that you are honest." "Thank you, Princess Ngozi. You've been a great support, and I am immensely grateful. Thank you for always being there for me, even with all the rumors about me in the palace. You are always by my side when I need you most." "It's my duty, Chioma," replied Princess Ngozi, before embracing her. A week later, It was the day when Chioma was to be punished in front of all the villagers. All the villagers had gathered at the palace, eager to witness the event, and everyone awaited the arrival of the high priest. Everyone was waiting impatiently for the high priest's arrival. In the circle reserved for the session, Chioma was placed on her knees in the middle of the crowd. As she awaited the start of the ceremony, her eyes met with those of Prince Emeka. His face showed distrust and anger. After a few minutes of waiting, which felt like an eternity, the high priest finally arrived. He was a very old man, walking with confidence. He had a pipe in his mouth, which he smoked every time he chanted his incantations. He knelt in the middle of the crowd, placed cowries on the ground, and began chanting incantations. He paced back and forth between Chioma and the king. Then he paused for a few minutes, gazing at the sky as if he was hearing something. After long moments, he turned to the king and politely greeted him. "You are always welcome in our palace," replied the king. As the crowd remained quiet and tense, the old man turned to Chioma and asked, "Young girl, I ask you one last time. Are you sure you did not kill your husband, Prince Ikenna?" "I had nothing to do with it," she answered sadly. The old man replied again, "Young girl, we are not here to play. Our gods are merciless, and even though you are pregnant, they will punish you if you are guilty. This is the last time I will ask you this. Were you involved in the death of your husband, Prince Ikenna?" "No, elder. I had no part in his death, and I would never do such a thing." "Very well. If you are certain of your innocence, repeat this. I, Chioma, swear that I had nothing to do with the death of Prince Ikenna. If I am guilty, may the gods unleash their wrath upon me, but if I am innocent, may they leave me and punish the guilty." She immediately obeyed, looking confident. "I, Chioma, swear that I had nothing to do with the death of Prince Ikenna. If I am guilty, may the gods unleash their wrath upon me, but if I am innocent, may they leave me and punish the guilty." After she had finished repeating the old man's words, everyone began looking to the sky. But everyone was surprised to see that nothing happened. There was no sign that Chioma was guilty. All the villagers were shocked. They couldn't believe that Chioma had been telling the truth all along, and that she truly had nothing to do with Prince Ikenna's death. Everyone was wondering how this could be possible. Some still doubted her innocence, while others hung their heads, ashamed of having unjustly condemned and made her suffer all this time. Queen Uzoma was speechless. It was at this moment that a villager shouted from the crowd, "Why is nothing happening? If this young girl is truly innocent, why hasn't the guilty party been revealed?" Everyone was curious to understand. The king stood up and turned to the old man. "Why is everything so calm all of a sudden? Why aren't the gods reacting?" The old man raised his hands to the sky and began reciting incantations again, smoking his pipe, which emitted a lot of smoke. He knelt again on the ground before his cowries and chanted long incantations in a strange language. The crowd grew impatient. After long minutes of incantations, he turned once again and faced the king. "I have no answer, Your Majesty. The gods have given me no answer." The king was troubled. "Why aren't the gods saying anything? Can you tell us what's going on?" "All I can tell you is that I have received no response from the gods. Everything is dark, and all I can see are flames and smoke. That's all I could see." The queen stood up in anger. "That girl is not innocent. I don't know what she did for everything to be so calm, but I know she's not innocent. She's the one who killed my child." She pointed her finger at Chioma. "I'm not foolish enough to believe all of this. Know that I am aware that this is all just a scheme. You are a witch, and sooner or later, you will be exposed in this palace. Today, you've managed to escape, but know that I will do everything in my power to ensure the truth comes out, and everyone will proclaim loud and clear that you are nothing but a liar." After these words, she stormed off from the crowd in anger and entered her room. The priest left the palace without saying anything to anyone. The king, on the other hand, was overwhelmed by the turn of events. Throughout his reign, he had never witnessed such a scene. His son had been murdered, and even the priest was unable to find the culprit. He ended the session. All the villagers returned home disappointed. As everyone was leaving, Princess Ngozi once again approached Chioma. She knelt beside her and said, "Now you can take a deep breath, Chioma. It is clear that you are innocent. You can thank the gods for clearing your name today. At least you won't have to be punished, and you can still stay in the village." "Thank you so much, Princess Ngozi," Chioma replied. "But I still don't understand why today's ceremony was so unusual. I still can't comprehend why the gods didn't give an answer. I would have liked the culprit to be exposed. I need that to find peace in my life. I don't understand why I'm being accused of killing my own husband." "Don't worry about that. Sooner or later, everything will be revealed." She embraced her to comfort her. They then left the palace courtyard, which was now empty. Once in her room, Princess Ngozi was confused. But why was she acquitted again today, despite everything I prepared yesterday? I can't understand it. I don't know how she managed to escape what I had planned, but I think it won't last long. She must be condemned. She began pacing back and forth in her room, looking both disappointed and angry. On her side, the queen was also very anxious. Everything seemed strange and suspicious to her. She was sure that Chioma was the culprit, but she couldn't comprehend what had happened during the day. She can't get away with it so easily. There must be a mistake. She can't kill my child and walk away as if nothing happened. In a fit of rage, she knocked over the table by her bedside and threw everything that was next to her. I can't tolerate things ending like this. She must suffer as much as I'm suffering from the absence of my son. She looked out the window to see if anyone was outside, then discreetly slipped out of the palace. She made sure no one had noticed her before heading quickly to a cabin in a remote part of the village. She cast one last glance behind her to make sure no one had seen her. She headed to a cabin in an area slightly away from the village. It was the cabin of Shanto, a great sorcerer renowned for invoking the gods and their mercies. He was seated with his eyes closed, chanting incantations. The queen entered the cabin with a heavy heart. "Good evening, great sorcerer. I am Uzoma Mojisola, the queen of the Uchiwa kingdom. I come to you tonight because I need a favor." Suddenly, Shanto opened his eyes, causing her to jump. She caught her breath and continued, "I am here because I lost my child, Prince Ikenna, and I am convinced that his wife Chioma killed him. However, during the confession ceremony, she was declared innocent, and I cannot accept that. She's a girl I've always hated, and I don't want the case to be closed. I know you can do something for me. I want her to suffer greatly. Do whatever you can to make her guilty. She is the only one capable of doing such a thing." After listening attentively to the queen, Shanto chanted something over his cowries, then replied, "I understand what you want. The gods were clear. Chioma is not guilty. But I can help you. However, wouldn't you like to know who is responsible for your son's death at least?" "No," replied the queen. "All that matters to me is that Chioma is declared guilty and severely punished. the rest doesn't. Before she could finish her sentence, Shanto interrupted her. Chioma is innocent. The one who killed your son is under your roof. It's one of your children. The queen rubbed her eyes and coughed to make sure she had heard correctly. What? One of my children? Yes, it's one of your children who killed your son. She lowered her head and remained silent for several minutes. Then she spoke again. No one must know what you just said. We need to pin this crime on Chioma. I don't want my children to suffer the wrath of the gods. No one must know. Shanto smiled before nodding. He wrote Chioma's name on a piece of paper, chanted several incantations over the name, and then returned to the queen. You may return home. What you asked for has been done. I'll let you see the outcome for yourself. The queen was overjoyed. She thanked the sorcerer and left the cabin to return to the palace. The next day, when Chioma woke up in the morning, a loud clap of thunder struck her violently while she was still sitting in her room. She lost consciousness and collapsed to the ground. Alarmed by the deafening noise of the thunder, the queen quickly ran into the room and saw her lying on the floor. Chioma was no longer breathing. She began to shout, "Come and see! Come and see! The gods never sleep!" Several nearby villagers rushed to the entrance to see what was really happening. No one dared to say a word. Chioma lay on the ground, unconscious. The news spread quickly throughout the village. Those who once felt compassion for Chioma were all disappointed. She really killed the prince. She is truly heartless. She's a witch. She must pay for this crime. When the king heard the news, he was very disappointed. He never thought that Chioma could have been capable of killing his son. Alerted by the information, all the villagers gathered again in front of the palace. Despite the scorching sun, everyone wanted to know Chioma's fate. In the middle of the crowd, Chioma, who had regained consciousness, found herself surrounded by a large crowd waiting for her to be punished. You could hear the villagers shouting, "She cannot stay with us in the village. She must be banished." The king observed the crowd for a long time before stepping towards Chioma. The late prince was a very generous and helpful man. If it weren't for your fault, he was destined to become the heir and king of our kingdom. You chose without remorse to kill him. From this day forward, I, the king of the village of Uchiwa, decide to banish you permanently from this village. As the crowd cheered and applauded the king, Chioma burst into tears. "Please don't do this. I am innocent. I beg you, don't do this, my king." As she continued to cry, the village guards forcefully dragged her and threw her out of the village. The news of her banishment spread quickly throughout the village. Everyone was talking about her. The villagers were all satisfied to know that she had been exposed, and relief could be seen on their faces. When the village priest heard the news, he was furious. He went straight to the palace to confront the king. "My king, you have made a great mistake. You should not have banished Chioma without consulting the gods." The king was astonished. He didn't understand why the high priest was speaking this way. He replied, "I only did what needed to be done. She committed a grave crime, and we cannot let her live among us. Don't forget, she recently tried to kill my second son, Prince Emeka. If she stays in this village, she will eventually kill us all." The high priest responded, "Know that you have just brought a great curse upon the entire village." "What curse are you talking about?" the king asked, worried. Without answering, the high priest turned and left the palace, leaving the king confused and lost. It had been a few days since Chioma was banished from the village. Gradually, life was returning to normal. The village became increasingly quiet, and some villagers claimed that it was Chioma's presence that had disturbed the kingdom's serenity. They said that since her departure, peace had returned to the village. Everyone resumed their activities as if nothing had happened. One day, the queen decided to gather her 3 children at the table for a serious conversation. They were all surprised and filled with questions. Since they were born, the queen had never organized such a meeting. They were eager to know the reason. "I have gathered you here today to find out who among you killed Prince Ikenna." They didn't understand why the queen was asking such a question. After a long moment of silence, Princess Ngozi spoke up. "I had nothing to do with it." Princess Amaka also responded that she was not responsible for Prince Ikenna's death. Everyone then turned to Prince Emeka to hear his version. Without regret, he responded, "I'm the one who killed Ikenna." The queen was shocked by Prince Emeka's response. "What? You killed your own brother? What made you do such a thing, Emeka?" "Don't lecture me, mother," he replied. "Yes, I killed Prince Ikenna. I did it because I wanted to be the only heir to the kingdom, and I falsely accused Chioma to protect my honor. You always taught us to get rid of anything that could prevent us from being happy. If Prince Ikenna stayed alive, I could never become the heir to the village. Besides, I never had affection for him since our birth. I only did what you always taught us. But I never taught you to kill each other to get what you want. You are family, and the same blood runs through your veins. Even if you wanted to be the heir, you didn't have to go after your own brother. When will you stop doing such foolish things? I always have to cover for you to preserve the honor of our kingdom and family. Mother, stop worrying so much. Prince Ikenna was never part of our family. I never considered him my brother. He just got what he deserved." With those words, Prince Emeka stood up and left. The princesses were shocked, and the queen was lost. Once in her room, Princess Ngozi recalled all of Prince Emeka's words. So, he's the real culprit. He killed Ikenna to become the next heir. She began to laugh as if it were funny. She stood in front of her mirror. "Don't get too happy, Prince Emeka, because soon it will be your turn. You'll go to the afterlife and explain yourself to your brother," she added with a mischievous smile on her face. "I don't understand why only men are considered fit to be king. I'm of royal lineage too, and I want to become king." She opened the drawer by her bedside and pulled out a small box containing a deadly poison. She looked at it and repeated to herself, "This should do the trick." The next day, when one of the servants brought Prince Emeka's meal to the sitting room, Ngozi waited for the servant to leave before sneaking into the room. She opened the box and poured the poison into the prince's food, stirring it gently to make sure it was well mixed. "When you eat this meal, you will join Prince Ikenna, and I will finally become the king as I have always wanted." She quickly returned to her room to avoid being caught. She sat on her bed, anxiously awaiting the outcome. Prince Emeka eventually came out of his room. He sat at the table and began eating his meal. As he ate, he started to feel unwell. He continued to eat, but after a while the pain intensified, and he could no longer sit upright. He began to scream, "Help me, my stomach, my stomach!" Never in his life had he felt such sensations. He felt as if his organs were tearing apart from inside. Alerted by his cries, nearby villagers gathered outside the room where he was. By the time they arrived, Prince Emeka had already collapsed. He lay on the ground, barely breathing. The queen ran into the room and began to cry. "Lord, what is happening to my son now?" Princesses Ngozi and Amaka also lamented, consoling each other. "Oh my God, Prince Emeka, what is happening to you?" The queen was inconsolable. She knelt by her son, crying uncontrollably. "What are you waiting for? Call a healer," she screamed. Quickly, a healer arrived at the palace to take care of Prince Emeka. All the villagers had gathered in the palace courtyard, which was filled with an eerie silence. Some villagers stood outside the room under the scorching sun, waiting for news. Meanwhile, the king, drenched in sweat, was filled with countless questions. Why have we been bombarded with so much bad news in recent days? What is happening to our once joyful kingdom? What have I done to deserve such a severe punishment? I lost my son Ikenna, and while still bearing that heavy blow, now my second son Emeka is slipping away. Suddenly, an old woman ran into the palace in tears. My king, my only child has just died." Then another man arrived, also in tears. My king, my wife has just been bitten by a venomous snake in the fields." As the king struggled to comprehend these declarations, a child also ran into the palace in tears. My king, I found my father and mother dead in the sitting room." The king was overwhelmed. Around him were several desperate and weeping villagers. "What is happening, Lord? Why are all these curses piling up on our village? Since we've been in this village, we've never heard of such things." Helpless in the face of the villagers' problems, the king knelt and looked up to the sky. "Lord, save me. I don't know what is happening to my village." Each day, the villagers faced new troubles. The village of Umachi had become a breeding ground for bad news. Villagers were falling ill, and no one could find a solution to their ailments. People were dying in large numbers, and the situation was becoming increasingly dire. Not knowing what else to do, the king decided to call back the village's high priest. When he received the king's message, the high priest prepared to head to the palace. Upon his arrival, the king was already waiting impatiently. "High priest, can you consult the gods about what is happening in the village? I am lost and have suicidal thoughts. Please ask the gods the cause of all these curses befalling the village." After listening to the king, the high priest took a deep breath, knelt down, and began to recite incantations while smoking his pipe, which emitted thick smoke. After several minutes of deep spirituality, he rose and faced the king. "My king, the gods tell me that the rightful heir of this kingdom is suffering outside the village. Everything happening in the kingdom is caused by the cries of vengeance from an innocent woman. As long as this woman is not treated justly in the eyes of everyone, this village will never know peace again." The king was speechless. The high priest continued, "Chioma is not responsible for Prince Ikenna's death. She was treated unjustly and was wrongfully banished from the village." "What can we do now?" the king asked. The high priest laughed wildly before replying, "Our ancestors will remain angry until Chioma and her son are found and brought back to this village. My king, if you want the curse to end, you must quickly gather your men to find Chioma and bring her back to the village. This is the only solution if you want things to return to normal in this kingdom." While the high priest was speaking to the king, they were interrupted by Princess Ngozi's cries. She was lying on the ground, writhing in pain, and the queen was shouting by her side. The king rushed over and saw his daughter on the ground. "Why are the gods attacking my family? She is all I have left. High priest, please help me save them." The high priest approached the king and said, "My king, you must simply find the young woman and her child. After that, the gods will tell us what to do next." The king quickly gathered the palace guards and ordered them to find Chioma. They immediately began their search. They travelled many miles, crossing rivers and forests. Worry was evident on their faces. Meanwhile, in the kingdom, sadness marked the king's face. Sitting beside his severely ill daughter, he wept and pleaded with the gods for help. He prayed that the guards would quickly find Chioma so that his family could be spared from the curse. The high priest, on the other hand, continued to implore the gods for forgiveness and recited incantations. 2 weeks passed, and the curse continued to spread throughout the village. Chioma remained missing, but the guards did not give up. Unfortunately, a few days later, Queen Uzoma also fell ill. The king was at a loss. Ngozi was already sick, and now his wife was too. He prayed every day that Chioma and her son would be found. One day, a messenger ran to the king. "My king, we have found Chioma and her son. They are with the guards and will soon be at the palace." The king was overjoyed at the news. "Finally, we will put an end to all these curses. Make sure everything is ready to receive them," the king ordered. The following day, Chioma finally arrived in the village. Accompanied by one of the palace guards, she held tightly to the hand of her child, little Obi, who had already grown considerably. She looked very tired, but she was happy to return to her village. "Welcome," said the king. "The gods are very angry with the village, and a terrible curse has befallen us since your departure. We treated you unjustly, and we are paying dearly for it. You are the only one who can help us end all of this." "I am aware of everything that has happened in the village, my king. I am also ready to help, so that the villagers can regain their health." "Tell me what I must do," Chioma replied. The high priest then asked the king to gather the entire village for a ritual to lift the curse. Quickly, all the villagers who were still in good health gathered. When the ceremony began, the high priest slowly approached Princess Ngozi, who was now in a wheelchair. "The gods are angry with you. You must confess everything you know, or you will die soon. If you want to save your life, you must confess in front of the whole village everything you know." A cold chill ran down Princess Ngozi's spine, and she began to cry. In a barely audible voice, and in tears, she confessed in front of all the villagers, "I am the one who killed Prince Emeka." All the villagers were shocked. The king was in disbelief. "What?" he exclaimed. "You killed your brother, Prince Emeka?" Without paying attention to the king, Princess Ngozi continued. "Before doing that, I also cast a spell on Chioma, so that she would always be blamed for all the mistakes my brothers and I made." Chioma was shocked. "But you always showed me that you were on my side, Princess Ngozi." A shiver ran through Chioma's body, and she held her son tightly as if he might slip away. Ashamed, Princess Ngozi lowered her eyes. "I did all this because I wanted to be the first woman king of our kingdom." Suddenly, the priest interrupted her. "You also know who killed Prince Ikenna, and you must reveal that as well." "Yes, indeed, it was my brother Prince Emeka who killed him." Suddenly she started screaming, my eyes, I can't see anything. Help me!" "What is happening to her, High Priest?" the king asked. The High Priest replied, "This is the punishment the village gods have inflicted upon her. She will remain blind until the day she changes her ways. If she doesn't learn from her mistakes, she will die." An elder standing in the middle of the crowd shouted, "What an abomination! Since when do women become kings in this kingdom?" The high priest continued his incantations. After a few minutes, he stopped again. "The queen will not be spared. She will remain ill until the day she recognizes her mistakes and apologizes to Chioma. She knew that Prince Emeka killed Prince Ikenna to become the heir to the kingdom. She paid a sorcerer and asked him to place Prince Emeka's punishment on Chioma. She knew Chioma was innocent, but wanted her to suffer. The villagers were all stunned. They were all lost and overwhelmed by the unfolding revelations. The high priest continued. The village of Umachi has suffered all these curses because of the actions of the queen, Prince Emeka, who is now dead, and Princess Ngozi. Now, the gods demand that little Obi, the child of Princess Chioma, be crowned the prince of this village. Meanwhile, a tear escaped from Chioma's face. All the villagers regretted having misjudged her. They all knelt before her to ask for forgiveness. Even though she had been deeply hurt, she had a big heart and no longer held a grudge. I do not hold any of this against you, but this must serve as a lesson for all of us. In the future, we must make sure not to make innocent people suffer. The high priest continued his rituals, pleading for the gods' forgiveness and mercy. Little by little, the sick villagers began to recover, and peace returned to the village. The next day, a ceremony was organized to celebrate the coronation of little Obi. At his young age, he was already destined to become the king of the kingdom of Umachi. The village of Umachi became a model for all the other villages. They had learned from their mistakes and transformed their small kingdom into a sacred place where the errors of the past served as lessons and warnings for all. Chioma lived the rest of her life very happily alongside her son. Learn to respect the merits of others. Destiny cannot be forced. What belongs to Caesar will always return to Caesar. If you like this story, please don't leave without leaving me an encouraging comment.